Call to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Rachel, could you do a roll call?
Alsop.
Here.
Cruikshank.
Here.
Heifel.
Here.
Shield.
Here.
Musgrave.
Here.
Rankin.
Here.
Perkins.
Here. Move on to consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Village Council and will be approved in one motion. There'll be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after the consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda.
Mr. President, if I could just add that this approval, I believe you're talking about, is for the amended agenda.
Yes, sir.
And the item that was added to the agenda to amend it was the appointment of George Cullis to the DDA board. And it's a project that the president and the DDA has been working on for a few weeks now. So the motion would be to approve the amendment as agended, if that's what council wishes to do.
Yes.
I'll make the motion that we approve the amended agenda as presented.
I'll support.
Go to a roll call.
Heifel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion carried. Thank you. Move on to public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chair. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time up to an additional 4 minutes by majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. Mr. Feeney, that was quick.
Pat Feeney, 210 Franklin Street. Well, you already approved it, but here I got a question for you. Mr. Cullis to the DDA, I'll give you fair warning. I'm bringing it up at the next board meeting because guess what? Mr. Cullis never brought this in front of the township board. He's using our name as a supervisor. I'm the only person, because I was at the meeting, the marijuana meeting, that even knew about it. Of all the things that you could probably put him on there, let's see. He's treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce, acting president of Chamber of Commerce. You have him on, he also runs a Dickens Festival, you know, but you chose the DDA. Now, it was stated at that meeting that there was some outcry by the people in the township for representation on the DDA. Funny thing is, none of the other board members ever heard that. And here's the question I've raised, and Mr. Perkins and others have heard me raise this question. Mr. Shields also has raised this question, is we had no problems with having a member of our board on there. But the problem we do have is that we feel we have the right to choose how that member acts on that board. And my concern was I didn't want him as a voting member on there because that involves us in things that we don't want to be involved in. Now, when I bring it up in front of the board, they might, you know, we might come back and they might just simply say that's fine, but it should have been brought in front of us because that is representing us. Now, if one of you were to come to us and say we want to be on a committee representing the village, I would expect them to have talked to you and had your approval, or at least to bring it forward. So by chances, there's a great possibility as to the next meeting, you might be looking for somebody else on it. But my only concern was at the time was, and to be honest with you, it began with whether he was a voting member or non-voting member. You took a business person over, you took an elected official over a business person. You already have an elected official. That is your village president. Why are you going to take a business person off of there? And like I said, you had numerous other ways of getting Mr. Cullis on there. And, quite frankly, I just find that very odd. And, right here and now, I'll tell you, there was no, the general consensus I was getting from board members was, we just don't want him as a board member. Now I'm beginning to think that this is inappropriate. very inappropriate that it was not brought before our board first, and then for you to approve it, and the nonsense that you're going to take another elected official over a business person. I think that doesn't show the right sign for the business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Do we have any other public comment? Mr. Love?
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. There's a couple of things I'd like to cover. One is this water lawyer deal. The fact that this waterworks project needs to be preserved. And I'd like to mention a little bit about what I'm doing with the DDA in Detroit. First off, this $100,000 legal fee is just ridiculous because lawyers have a bloodsucker mentality. When they leech onto a project, they just run the bill up. You have a responsibility to oversee this and not see it get out of control, and you haven't done that. This thing is ridiculous. There's no, I FOIA'd the requests and got the bills, and they redacted everything, and I told you last time about the mileage deal. This is just amateur hour. They just send in the bill. They don't have any work product listed. This is not some big case where there are injuries and secret kind of things that go on. You should be involved in it. You should get them here to have an accounting, and you should have your village attorney oversee this and have some input to straighten it out, not just give them a blank check. 100,000 is just off the chart. That's your responsibility to do due diligence. You just can't claim, well, we're just here. Forget about it. Do your job. Please. Due diligence. Well, moving on to the waterworks. It's up to, what, $12,000 now to demolish it. There's better use for that money in the town than getting rid of this building that is an historic building. And the problem with doing this is that this thing has been neglected. It's not going to be a $100,000 bill to fix it either. You already got that with the lawyer. The problem is that the weather is running out. It's hard to put a roof on a building when it's freezing out. So it needs to be done expeditiously, and you should allow them to do it. If Hoffman is given that prerogative, that would take this $10,000 bill or $12,000 bill, plus you don't know what else it is, because sometimes these things come out, oh wow, we didn't know about that, so we're going to have to pay more money. This isn't a frozen amount that you're putting into it. So it takes that out. You can take that $10,000, you can fix up Saginaw Street, which was one of the top things that was asked, not bike lanes, fix the street up, make it aesthetic. That was what the people asked for in that top item. So we're running out of weather. Also, I was down there for the little canoe project that they had, and they had a nice turnout. Some of the people said, gee, I didn't know there was a boat launch here, or a canoe launch.
John, your time.
I'm on it.
Save that for next public comment.
Pardon?
Save that for next public comment.
Oh, save it for the reruns? Okay. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your valuable time.
Do we have any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Story, Chief of Police, 315 South Broad. Just here to throw out some information that is our beginning our Shop of the Cop season. We've already initiated one event. It was a raffle for a bow, which was subsequently already won and passed out. But we have two more upcoming events. One of them's on October 29th. It's a costume skating party for all of you that have skaters in your family. The initial cost is $5 to skate or not. You can play laser tag. There's a bounce house. and all the proceeds will go to our Shop of the Cop program. It'll be held at the Roller Haven Skating Arena in Grand Blanc. And our second one, which is always fun for me, since I get to put on an apron and that, we're going to take over the Holly Donut Shop on November 4th. And
Nice.
again, we'll get a percentage of the proceeds in that. I just wanted to go with the obvious joke here on that.
What's the date on that, Chief?
That would be on November 4th.
November
And we'll be running things from 8 to noon. It'll be all about us just serving them up rather than eating them, I guess. So if you want to see me with a bunch of powder all over me and wearing an apron, I'll be there arguing with the cook on how to flip donuts correctly, since I have so much experience. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Chief. Do we have any other public comment? No? We'll close public comment at this time. Move on to old business, of which we have none. New business, we have a study session with a presentation from Roe. Thank you, sir.
All right. So we'll be presenting tonight about pavement management and kind of looking from the study that was completed, the PACER rating study that was completed and presented back in January, and kind of how to take all of that information moving forward and really develop some type of a pavement management plan. So here, our first slide is a chart from that report that kind of shows the existing conditions. Currently, there's 0% of the roads are considered in good condition. About 41% are in fair condition, and 59% are in poor condition. There are the 3 that were redone. So this data, like I said, is from the prior. We did the PACER rating back in 2016, so it was before those roads were paved. So that's still, even with the 3 roads that were redone, that's still a small percentage that would fall in that good category. So it's not going to create a large change there. So really what it means is average PACER rating for the entire city is a 4. That PACER scale is a 1 to 10 scale. So really what that means at a 4 is that your roads are in poor condition overall. A majority of your roads will need rehabilitation or reconstruction. And then the roadways that are still in fair condition, looking at maintaining, doing any type of crack sealing treatment or possibly applying a slurry seal. These are treatments that won't necessarily add any pavement or any structural value to the pavement, but will help it maintain a safe driving surface and get a few more years out of that pavement itself before you're looking at the rehabilitation or reconstruction. So with all of that information, where do you start? Kind of one of the things we discussed was looking at all the different components of infrastructure. Currently, you have the condition of the water main, knowing the ages of the water main, where you might have water main breaks, and then knowing the condition of the sanitary sewer, which is currently being evaluated as a part of a SAW grant that we're working with the DPW department on with Brian. And then also looking at, is there storm sewer present? Is there an area where it's ditching could be used, those types of things. And kind of compiling all of that information and determining where the worst roads are, where there are needs for water main or sanitary sewer improvements, to kind of start focusing on those roads first. The last thing, you want to do if you pave a road is to come back and cut it open to repair some of the underlying infrastructure that's there. So really determining the roadways with the most need overall from right-of-way to right-of-way, and you can include sidewalk in that if you have private utilities that are looking to do any work, kind of getting all of that at the same time. And then keeping in mind to continue that preventative maintenance to not let those roads that are still in fair condition start to deteriorate any faster than they need to. So roadway treatments that we talked about in our report. The first one is a routine crack seal that's going through in any joints that are getting wider than 1/4 of an inch. Sealing them, this prevents the water from getting underneath the pavement or getting into that crack and creating a larger crack, becoming creating alligator cracking and all of that. A slurry seal will kind of take care of any of the cracks that are smaller than 1/4 of an inch. It'll get in and seal those cracks up while also sealing your entire road. So any asphalt pavements where you've kind of lost some of that surface aggregate, that'll help refill that. That's a emulsified sealant that you're putting on essentially. And then microsurfacing is really doing it's 3/4 of an inch of HMA. You won't do any milling with that. Typically you would do that in conjunction with doing a crack seal. It's kind of interchangeable with the slurry seal, that it'll just provide that. It doesn't provide any structural value, but something to fully seal all those little cracks that are there in the pavement that you can't yet do a crack seal on. And then your next step is a mill and resurface, where you take off the top 2 or 3 inches of pavement and maybe do repairs to some areas where you might have more damage. You might see on the surface some type of alligator cracking, and just really removing that pavement and doing some type of a full depth patch. And then you get to reconstructing, where you're replacing curb and gutter, driveways, sidewalk, replacing the whole roadway. So we kind of offer different per square yard prices that'll help you be able to budget for all these different conditions based on the condition of the roadway today and where we project it to deteriorate over the next 20 years. So we kind of looked at different investment options. The $500,000 is where we started, annual roadway reinvestment or investment. And over 20 years, if you spent that $500,000, you can see that you're getting more good roads because you're probably doing some reconstructs or resurfacing, but your fair roads went down significantly, and 75% of that is poor roads. And we moved on to looking at spending $1 million annually, and you're almost getting to where you have good and fair is about 45% there, with the other 55% being poor roads. So you've made an improvement, but you're still not at an average of a 6 overall, looking at most of your roads being in at least fair condition. So we looked at $1.5 million annually, and that gets you to a point where your good roads and your fair roads are 65% of your infrastructure, and you just have the 34% still that's in poor condition. So with that, what kind of funding is available there? You do have several federal aid eligible roads. These are roads so when you say federal aid eligible, you can apply to obtain funding where 80% of it is covered by a federal grant, and then you're liable for 20% of that fee to do the roadway. So that includes all of Saginaw Street, Grange Hall Road, Academy Road, and Oakland Street, East Maple Street, Elm Street, and then East Road from Elm to Maple. There are other grants that become available. One that's become available recently has been the scrap tire grant. This is used a lot to do a mill and resurface treatments. And what makes it special is you're using, they can use for part of the aggregate or even the emulsifier for the asphalt, is to be able to use the rubber tire material. And that's a 50% grant, but it's still covering a portion of that cost, even though you have to bring 50% of the cost to the table. And in the projects that we've done, the pavement's held up well. You can start doing the same preventative maintenance treatments, such as the slurry seal or doing the crack seal as it ages. And then other options are doing a special assessment district or doing some type of a street millage. So that is what I had to kind of present. Questions?
Yeah, what we really want to do is talk with you, I guess, more answer your questions on that. This was, like Jill said, kind of a overview of the report that we had and different options. And I guess we want to spend some time with you tonight just answering your questions and helping you think about really the next step forward on that. So I guess with that, we would open it up to questions from the council on that.
When we do the infrastructure assessment of, the water mains and the sewers and all the underground things, are we going to do like an overlay so that we can compare the worst infrastructure, overlay it with the worst roads and say, okay, this is the place where we need to start? Is that the kind of report that we're going
Just
to?
about verbatim, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's, like Jill mentioned, we're currently working on your SAW grant, so
Right.
we're going through the sanitary sewer. We spoke with Brian, back and forth as far as where the worst water mains are, where they've had a lot of breaks and stuff like that. And then storm sewer, obviously, the village lacks a lot of good storm sewer right now. I mean, there's a number of areas where you do have drainage problems and stuff. So yes, basically, the next step really is to, when you guys, I guess the first step for you is to figure out how you're going to fund things, and basically then, okay, is it gonna be $500,000 a year that you wanna spend? Is it, 200,000, I don't know, $1 million? Figure that, and then we can start to really look at how far is that $500,000 gonna go per year. Look at specific sections. Jill's got I guess in front of us, where all the roads were rated, and as the red, orange, kind of come back up through there. That's the pavement condition. But then, like you say, we look at, okay, we know this area here has bad curb and gutter, has
80-year-old sewers.
Right, 80-year-old sewers, 50-year-old sewers, whatever, and we've had to replace, or we've had 3 water main breaks in the last 5 years. So that's, at that point, you start focusing, that's the one we want to start with. And we can do all of that road next year, or we need to break it into 2 phases, or whatever on that. So yeah, you're exactly right. We will, we're right in the middle of the SAW grant portion. Have a fairly decent handle on where your water main issues are and stuff. But yeah, that's exactly it. And a lot of that too is, when we talked about like the mill and fill like we did and Hartner and Holly Bush and stuff this year, that really, we hopefully will get 15 years type thing out of it. But keep in mind, we didn't touch
Anything else?
including the curb and gutter and stuff like that. So yeah, you have a nice driving surface, but hopefully we won't have to dig up the sewer, during that 15 years. But there's a chance of that. So.
Yikes.
You ever, I didn't talk to Brian, but let's say we put 2 or 3 people more on, bought our own equipment, had our own equipment, not brand new stuff, but used stuff, and have our guys always repairing the roads around here. Would it be cheaper? I mean, it's something to think about. Not Brian, but I mean, hire 2 professional
We
guys.
have a roller, we've got some paving equipment.
And I mean, do that, and then we can repair the roads all the time. We'll have the stuff. We got a brand-new barn. If we have to build another one, we could.
They were out coal patching the other day.
Yeah, I mean, Councilman Rankin is right. So we do have equipment to do small repairs. We do not have the equipment to do the large repairs or the resurfacing that you saw on Cogshaw, Hartner, or Hollybush Court over this summer. And so really, I think this comprehensive plan, you know, that Roe is starting to lay out for us is good, and that will provide a basis for council to make a decision on where we should head. Staff will continue to work with Roe to kind of prioritize the roads and come up with a worst case which needs to be fixed first. And then additionally, we're already in discussions with some of our financial partners at Plant Moran. We'll be reaching out to Benzinski and Company to talk about different options for raising money, because, I mean, it may be the decision of council to stay with what we normally budget. However, that's not up to the $500,000 level, and I think from the slides and the presentations that probably is not going to serve us well. So we'll have to look at some other avenues to go. Now, Jill talked about federal aid roads, and so we have several federal aid roads within the village here. We are currently evaluating with the Oakland County Road Commission the intersection at Grange Hall and North Saginaw. I spoke about that previously. We have about a $1.2 million federal earmark for federal aid roads. That intersection at Grange Hall and North Saginaw, though, is just not adequate. The traffic chokes off during rush hours, both in the morning and the evening, as you know, as you've gone through there. So that's the first option. The Road Commission, they should be letting us know very soon whether that's a project that they think they're going to be able to complete. It's a tough situation there because of the Marathon gas station right on the corner. If they get into a situation to where they have to acquire or buy out that gas station, that's a huge expense. And so if for some reason that intersection project is not done, then with my discussions with the Road Commission, that $1 million earmark is something we'd be able to turn back around. And we've already had discussions with Road 2 about putting that into programming. So we'll have more to report in future meetings on that. So we'll be reporting on the federal earmark that we have. We'll also be reporting on future dates when we'll be able to bring in some of our financial consultants to give some additional information to council for decisions.
With that, it seems like it's a big coordination, obviously, to kind of get all those stars to align where everybody's here at the same meeting. Would that be something like on a Saturday study session, or would that be something we want to take on at a council meeting?
Certainly, I think, so my plans are right now are to see if we can get our financial people lined up for either the January or February study session. You know, and maybe after, it's probably going to require more than one. Maybe after we get a preliminary introduction, if we need to do a Saturday meeting, that might be appropriate.
Okay.
Mr. Walker, has there been any movement in the negotiation between Marathon and the property owner behind them?
No.
No? They're still at a stalemate?
Not that I'm aware of, yes.
Okay. Because that would solve that problem, just like that.
Yes.
Mr. Elson, just wanted to circle back on your question. Typically, as Mr. Walker mentioned, maintenance a lot of times is done by the DPW staff and stuff, you know, but like you said, major projects typically it's more cost effective to have a contractor come in, do it, get it done, get out of there, where DPW have all their daily work that they have to do anyways, and just try and tax them with, you know, something that's probably a little out of their expertise, and that as well as trying to rent or lease equipment and stuff like that. We just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't them. I'd say, let's say hire 2 people that do that.
Yeah.
And have them on board. It's just, was the thought, and have our own equipment where we can always do our own stuff, even if we buy used equipment. Down the road, it'd be cheaper.
It seems like they'd have a high barrier to entry to get started.
Yeah.
And so,
That seems
and then
like
the
the
longevity is
thought.
when they're done with the roads. you know, the equipment's gonna sit somewhat stagnant for a few years before it needs to get used again.
They'll never be done
We
with the
won't be-
roads.
yeah.
I mean,
We've
in
got to
reality,
be
but-
done.
We've got $1.5 million project.
Well, yes,
20
but
years,
if
and
we
we're
get,
still
let's
not
say we get to
done.
that point in 2026, we're not gonna be ripping up roads all the time, that's what I mean. So right now, we,
2036.
you
It
know,
was just a thought, Dave.
yeah, so
Keep it all inside the village.
Now, within your report from Roe, as you're compiling it, you're gonna give us, you know, this has to be done, down to this can wait?
You know, we typically don't do that.
No.
For you, because, again, what you run into is a criticality of the roadway.
Mhm.
You know, this may be a terrible road right now.
But it's not
You only
as
get
frequently
5 cars
used.
a day,
Okay.
type thing, as opposed to this one's a 7, but it has, you know, 90% of the traffic going down through it. So what we really wanna do is work with you guys, as council members. I mean, you know the worst areas as far as criticality, and then try and come up with something like that. Because, like I said, for us to rate just on condition, again, doesn't probably tell the whole
Doesn't
story.
take in the whole picture?
So-
No, I deliver 850 Tri-County Times around town every Saturday with my
So you
kids.
know, yeah.
I can tell you the roads.
Yeah, kind of the bummer of when you rattled off all those streets that have federal aid possibilities, it was like 9 out of 10 of them aren't in really that bad a shape. Like Saginaw's not horrible, Maple's okay, Elm's all right.
Elm was redone
Yeah.
2002.
And that's why, because you were able
'Cause
to
they're
use-
eligible.
You use your money on that, where, you know, you take a Hartner or Holly
Right.
Bush or something like that,
Right.
you know, that's.
North.
Any of the Patterson subdivision streets are just, you know,
There's even some right up here that, right just out here that,
well, yeah, East Road on this end.
what's that one road, Baird? Like
Yeah.
a section of Baird's like practically the moon.
Beirut, Lebanon.
You showed this federal aid. Is there any state aid available?
to piggyback on that, information on the road bill that was passed in 2015.
that's.
Is that supposed to trickle down to the municipality, or is that like a state and county road?
Oh, that's a good question, because I don't
I tried to look it up real quick and there was nothing
on there.
I could find substantial.
And I guess this is more of for the village. Are there village roads and then the county takes care of the majors, or is it?
Right,
We have a combination.
Right.
We take care of Saginaw,
Okay.
Grange Hall,
Right.
which is considered a major road for Act 51, Elm Street, Maple Street, Oakland, Morrison, Academy is considered a major street. Those are all maintained by the village. Grange Hall and North Holly Road, north of Grange Hall, are all maintained by the county. So in the Act 51 money, my understanding is it's supposed to trickle down.
Okay.
And we've seen slight increases in our, last quarter and the beginning of this year in our major road funds, and while we get back to Act 51, but it's nowhere near the amount of money that we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing required, but I didn't know if we were supposed to see an increase as in, like you said, it's kind of trickling down, and from what I understand, it won't, that bill isn't even in full effect until like 2021 or something along those
Exactly.
lines. And so, yeah, the increase obviously probably doesn't offset the cost that we need, or, you know,
Yeah.
help out too much,
If you
but.
look at it percentage-wise, it looks like it should be a large amount of money, but based on the amount of money we got, I believe one quarter we got a 30% increase in major roads, but it was only like $19,000 or something.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
because it's based on your Act 51 roads, so that's why it's.
Right, okay.
So we're
I
not
didn't know if
getting
that
much
was
to
even in
begin with.
play, and it seems like it is,
Yeah.
it's to some extent.
Slowly working its way
Yeah,
down.
I gotcha. But, yeah, okay, so back to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that was basically my question.
The
Other
state,
money
so-
other
well,
than
the,
federal. I want
is there
state
state aid or state
Mhm.
grants that
Yeah.
would be available?
Well, the scrap tire grant's technically a state grant because the MDEQ puts that one out. Sometimes a lot of this grants out there, it's typically based on industrial, or if you're gonna have a business come in, or it's an economic generator, then you might be eligible for funds to redo a road because you're gonna have more truck traffic or something. But that's something where, you know,
Tied to the number of jobs typically.
yes, so it's something where periodically there could be state, but there's not a program that's every single year out there right now that we know of.
There really hasn't been
No.
much state funding in the 22 years that I've been involved in this. There just really hasn't been that much state state funding there. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
The scrap tire grant is a, you know, a viable option for you for some of the roads on that, which, as Jill mentioned, it's a 50-50
Yes.
split on that, but what you're gonna end up doing is you're probably gonna end up paying maybe 30% more, 20 to 30% more for the mix, because again, they are grinding up scrap tires, putting it in there, so it's kind of a specialized mix that not a lot of plants are doing. And so there's kind of a lineup, and there's a little bit of premium that you pay on that. So while you're getting 50% money, it might only be 25% money type thing, so.
I guess I would ask that if, does that have to do with that it's a better product and that's why there's a premium over it?
They're
No,
just not
less
set up
people
for
make
it.
so there's just a market, it's a market-driven price.
Gotcha. Alright.
On the scrap tire material, what's like the longevity of the roads using that mix?
What's the advantage over
Or
a standard
like-
product if
yeah,
it's got
like-
a price premium?
Like the advantages, longevity.
It's the same, I mean, from what we've seen since they've started, there hasn't
4
been,
years.
yes.
About 4 years.
But it's also something where, you know, they've tried things before. It's not something where we've seen any deterioration beyond what you would expect from any other pavement. And the advantage is, yes, like Doug said, you're paying the premium, but you're getting a little bit of that assistance where you're not paying 100%.
Right, so you're still getting some help.
So, yeah, and I
which
think
is better than nothing.
when they started it, they were kind of hoping that the asphalt plants would be more on board. We've seen more people produce it now that they allow the crushed, or the,
Rebar?
yeah, no, it's just the,
Steel belting.
not the steel in there, but for the material itself, that it's just the ground up tire can be just added. It's not a specific, emulsifier or whatever that has to go in.
I
It's,
got you. So they're
the
using
process
same
of
product and
producing
then
it
just
is
putting rubber
easier.
into it instead of making
Yeah.
a whole special product.
Right, they started
So.
just making it, the emulsifier basically what holds it together, but now they're allowing it to basically mix it in as part of just the
Yeah.
mix,
Right,
so.
standard product.
So yeah, so you're seeing, so that price can change with that process changing too, so.
And I kind of have another question too on these prices here. Are these just roads, or is this infrastructure that would be included?
Unfortunately, just roads. We did that just because your paving funds are gonna come out of your road funds, where if you're replacing your sanitary sewer, that comes out of your utility budget as far as the sanitary sewer funds and water funds on that, so unfortunately, it's just the roads we cost, so. And again, they're estimated based on, you know, typical projects and stuff, and they're probably a little high on that, because we know, again, you're probably not gonna do it next year, and maybe 3 years out, 5 years out on that as well, so.
Inflationary index factored in.
A
and-
little bit, I'm not saying those prices are good 10 years from now.
No.
But we're trying to accommodate some of that, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions?
No, other than just the next time we do it, I mean, I'd like to have some ideas of federal aiding, if it's a straight 50-50 match or what's required on our end, and then, you know, I know we had that in a packet before, but this roadmap of what you guys have done with the results of the PACER rating, you know, so it's, you
Yeah,
know.
we can definitely get you that map. I know it was in the original report, which I think was, I know it was part of your packets back
It was.
in May or something like that, so I mean, we can definitely get that for you if you'd like. I guess, Jill, the federal funding availability on that, one thing it typically takes, I mean, if you say today you wanna redo Grange Hall Road, approximately how long, because I know they all go through all the county lists and everything on that.
Yeah, it's still, you're still gonna
Years.
be several years out, just
Mhm.
based on the fact that you're gonna have to get the county to agree that that's gonna be one of the roads that the federal aid money goes to. And then you have to do, there's a call for projects, you have to get it approved, and it has to be on the tip. Once it's on the tip, then you go through design and all of that, so it is a process.
And
Right,
you're-
right.
You could be looking 5 years out.
Yeah.
On that before you see that money, so.
Yeah.
Wow. The wheels of government.
Hate to be the
fast.
bearer of discouraging news, but it's just, it's a world we.
Well, it's better that everybody knows what we have coming down the road than getting to the end of the road and going,
Any pun there?
Twice.
just a little. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Manager?
So nothing else pursuant to the road study. We will go ahead and send out those maps again so that you have those and you can be looking at those as we prepare for our next set of meetings regarding this, which will have to do with different financing options or information in order to make budget decisions.
All right, thanks. Well, while you're at it, well, we have your manager report.
So really nothing other than what's in the written report, except last night at the DDA meeting, we talked about there being a purchase agreement on 111 College, and that is the old Holly High School. I can't remember it actually had a name. It was named after
Mabel
somebody.
D. Benson.
Mabel Benson.
That's it.
There you are.
Yeah, so actually, that building has a purchase agreement on it. Actually, that's the second purchase agreement that has been on it this year. The first purchase agreement, or the purchaser did not follow through, and so the building went back on the market. It sold again. The beauty of this particular purchaser is that they desire to leave the school intact, or the building intact, and refurbish the entire building and preserve the history of it. And that's very significant. The first purchaser that was looking at the building had intended on tearing down about 2/3 of the building, all of this single-story building, and just leaving the 2-story tower, if you may. And then they were going to try and work with the planning commission and put some residential units around the outside of the perimeter of the property, which would have been attractive, but the village would have lost all of the historical significance in that building. So the new purchaser, they're interested in doing that. They're going through their due diligence right now. One item that they asked me to look into, and so I informed the DDA board that I was going to look into it last night, and I want the council to know, just in case you hear of it, is they are wondering about the possibility of being included in the DDA district. And so there's several ways that properties can be included in the DDA district or added to it. I mean, they can be a regular DDA property and have tax capture at the county level, as well as any of the other affected bodies, as well as the village. Or they can be a tax capture of the village only, or they can be a non-tax capturing part of the DDA district. And so I have a meeting on Thursday to where I'm going to start. I've had some preliminary phone calls I've made already. I'm going to have a meeting on Thursday where I'm going to explore that possibility a little more, and then I'll report back to the DDA board as the property is within their district, and then eventually back to the council again. But I just wanted to let you know that the intent of the property is that it be fully maintained. They want to enter into a partnership with Holly area schools to where they can highlight the history of the building and perhaps display some artifacts in it. And it's going to be an open building to the community for different events. And so as we get a finished plan on that, or after the closing, we'll be able to report more back. But I just wanted to let you know that there was some movement on that property. It's a significant move for us.
Is that the old community ed building?
Well, it's currently owned by the River Church. It used to be the
that's
high school.
one.
I don't know if it was
Didn't Vince
community
buy
owned.
that? Vince and Kari buy that?
It is a partnership of them and a party from Fenton.
Oh, so they're not going ahead with that now, then? I mean, Vince and Kari's not involved in it now at all?
Pardon me?
Oh, never mind, Jerry. I'm just curious, because I thought he bought it.
Oh, no, it's a great building. It's a sound building, and it has great potential. The condition of it on the interior is not so great right now, and the renovation costs will be extensive. But the parties involved, they have a heart for restoration of the building.
Is there
Very
a
good.
gymnasium in that building?
Pardon me?
Was there a gymnasium in that
There
building?
is.
Sure
Yeah,
is.
there still is.
Okay.
Yeah, we used
Kiwi
to
basketball in there.
have Nerf wars
That's
in
not
there.
what I was thinking.
Kind of an old style gym. If you've seen the movie The Hoosiers, it kind of reminisces
Yeah,
of that.
it still has the rollout. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank you, Mr. Walker.
that's all.
Ms. Rachel, will you be doing the clerk treasurer report?
Nothing that's not
Okay.
in the written report.
Okay,
Oh, she listened good.
I just wanted to bust your chops a little bit.
Perfect.
Mr. Shield, hiya.
Hiya, we met on the 5th, talked about some toy projects going on here in town and such. Along with, they wanted us to know that there are some musical instruments for low-income families available or down there. If anybody needs like any band instruments or anything for like rent or anything like that, they'll rent them out or what have you to low-income families in the area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rankin, Parks?
Our meeting last week, we just basically did a recap of our very successful holiday, went over some ideas for next year. We'll be in recess until January. We don't have Parks meetings in November and December. I'm disappointed to announce that the zombie run on October 14th has been canceled. And I put up a challenge to all of the board members to come back in January and for each and every one of them to come up with one project or one activity or one idea that the Parks Commission could sponsor, fund, and run. So hopefully come January, we'll have play day, we'll have music in the parks, we'll have the fireworks, and we'll have 7 other events throughout the year with a little luck. And then on Sunday, Linda Smith and I went out and decorated the Ganshaw gazebo. As you may have noticed, there are some Halloween decorations on the gazebo.
Very nice. Mr. Olson, zoning?
No zoning.
Nothing? Mr. Cruikshank?
We have not had a planning meeting since the last time I reported.
All right. Ms. Heifel?
We did not have a community center meeting since the last report. The director did include a written report in our packet, so
Right.
it's in there.
Council comments, Mr. Shield?
Nothing outside that the last car show, as Mr. Alsop might concur, that was a huge success. It was great
Awesome
to see all those smiling faces downtown enjoying our wonderful town that we have and enjoying the fabulous cars.
Outstanding. Mr. Rankin?
Nothing.
Bob?
Getting back to the car show, I think that the car show with guests and village people, I've never seen so many people in town.
It was packed.
I shortcutted them with cider. I only got 75 gallons and 850 donuts. It all went away in 2 hours. Never seen that many people in town. Have you?
No, it was very good turnout.
Awesome. No troubles, no problems with nobody.
Outstanding. Mr. Cruikshank?
A couple things. Is there an update on the sewer drain along Saginaw that we were discussing a few months ago behind
Dollar Tree?
Dollar Tree, the old Pontiac building, and the
We should have something, I think, by the next meeting. Attorney Gildner was finishing up with some last
okay.
minute details on
So
that.
in the next couple meetings, we'll definitely
We will,
have, okay,
yes.
for sure. After we had talked about the Pacer rating studies and the whole road funding, East Maple popped into my mind about when we do infrastructure, I think that might be the ripe opportunity to reach out to the township as well and actually get to work on getting a sidewalk from town all the way to the high school. Since we're gonna be redoing that as well, I think that we should kinda keep that at top of mind, to do that is, I didn't really pay attention until the past few years, but there is they're walking across everybody's front yard as it is, and there's definitely a trail, and we owe it to the students to do something like that. So if we can do our part and then reach out to the township to see if they're interested in partnering with us, I think that's the right opportunity for that one.
Certainly, and I think that's already on the township's radar. I mean, they've talked about the need for that also.
Okay.
Would be a good thing.
Also, budget discussions, since we're in that part of it, and Parks kind of reminded me, I think we had discussed maybe in December or before even the village administration gets to work on the budgeting for the next year. It was always one of my things that we should, as council, discuss things that we want done or we want in the budget that, we had all, campaigned on certain things, and I'm gonna work to get this in the budget and get that done. I think this year we should really take the opportunity, or at least think in the back of our minds what was, one thing that we wanted to see in the village, whether it was some sort of efficiency or capital improvement. And I think we should do that ahead of administration working the budget so that they know our wishes and to try and either fix that in or come up with a plan totally. So I don't know if that, maybe December or something along those lines. You guys typically get started right in January, right off of the bat.
Right, so we're doing a little different process this year also. The department heads, we're gonna talk about it tomorrow at our staff meeting, but staff is going to have our budgets at least rough draft by the end of December. Then we'll have a 2-year budget by then. But certainly if council had their wish list or direction for us by the end of December, we could still work it into what we're doing. So I think that that's very appropriate, and the timing would work out well. So our goal is to have rough drafts done the end of December, meet internally with staff in January, and then February and March conduct budget workshops with council as we did last year.
Great.
I guess I have one more question, if I may.
Go ahead.
The CN tracks in front of the Moose on Broad, what's the status on those?
They're in rough shape.
We're almost onto a daily phone call to them. We keep being promised that the foreman is going to either return an email or a phone call, and we haven't got that, so I've been, myself or my office help has been calling on a regular basis
Sick John Love on them.
to get that resolved.
Ms. Heupel?
Is there any progress on the Pontiac dealership? I know Red Devil owns it.
So they still own it. I had some preliminary discussions with them about the special assessment district, and they were evaluating what they were going to do. I can't tell you whether they're going to move forward or not with renovation at this time. Our code enforcement officer, Jeremy Watson, has contacted them or is in the process of contacting them about compliance with removing the plywood from the windows and at least cleaning that aspect of it up.
And how about the demolition of the car wash?
So we completed phase 1 on that because of the nature of the property and because there was heavy equipment stored, and the third factor because there was a laundromat behind. Phase 2 environmentals were required, and so they did their field work on it within the last 2 weeks, and so we're waiting on that report now.
Thank you.
Ms. Musgrave? Just want to say, great turnout for the car show. Had a good time. We'll open this back up for public comment. You know the rules. State your name and address. You got 4 minutes. Mr. Feeney.
Pat Feeney, 210 Franklin. I just need some clarification. I'm under the understanding that there, concerning Mr. Cullis and the DDA, that there was a opinion issued by an attorney whether the legality of him being on it, which, number one, never raised that question, never even questioned whether he was allowed. My question is, whose attorney did that? Do you know, Mr. Perkins?
I don't, but I do.
You don't know? Would you know, Mr. Walker?
Yes,
Whose attorney?
certainly I know. So at the request of the DDA, I consulted with Mr. Gildner, the village attorney.
Okay.
It wasn't necessary to issue a written opinion because it was a clear.
No, I just wanted to make clear, because
He
any
did.
legal
He did.
thing, it should be on the village, because the township had, number one, I will iterate once again, no knowledge of this, and quite frankly, nonsense. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot, Mr. Perkins. Why did you change your opinion on, and want Mr. Cullis? I've got just kind of suspicious, all of a sudden this was put on as an amendment onto the agenda. Why did you change your opinion on Mr. Cullis? Were you?
Well, I didn't really change my opinion. I just felt that George was on too many things. That was my only apprehension to putting him onto another board.
Right. So
That
but
was my only
what changed?
apprehension.
So what changed your mind now that?
Well, I had put forth Ray Curtin,
Right.
and the council rejected Mr. Curtin,
Right.
and the DDA board all requested that Mr. Cullis be added to the board.
Okay, I'm just curious on that. And once I said, so you had no choice, you had to accept what the DDA board?
Oh, I had a choice. I could have continued to put forth other names, but
I think you should have, quite frankly, as I said, I think you should have. And second of all, like I said, once again, I look at your members up there, and you don't find anything wrong with the fact that you allow people to, you know, it never occurred to you to ask Mr. Cullis, like, well, did you see if this is what the, you know, the township board wanted? No, you didn't. And second of all, why? Yeah, I'd like to hear the qualifications, you know, it'd be interesting to hear the qualifications, you think, why? You know, and I really do kind of question it. And you know what? Putting another elected member, what was wrong with Mr. Curtin? Other than the fact you didn't know him personally, which kind of, you know, when that question's raised, when you hear that in public and you're appointing people and you say, well, I don't know him personally, nothing against them. So is that a prerequisite that you have to be? And that was stated publicly, so don't tell me it wasn't. And, you know, I just, you know, what I just find about this, same group of people, Mr. Cullis is still on too many things, way too many things. And quite frankly, you had a choice of other ways of getting them on there. And, you know, we did not, and the question was raised because, and we have had this, I had discussion with other board members, question was raised because there have been stuff done by the DDA that we don't want to be involved with. The former supervisor quit because he wasn't really comfortable with some of the things the DDA did.
he
And, you
didn't
know,
quit. Your board voted to remove him.
well, that's true. What's him bringing it up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I shouldn't say that. He brought it up to be removed. And, you know, quite frankly, you're telling us that we have to have a member? I think that's unacceptable, really unacceptable. And the DDA had the opportunity to put him on for other things too. Not real appreciative of DDA. And why is it, why was this such a concern? You know, that's, you know, you get no answers from you guys, why that was such a concern that
Your
he had to
time.
be on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Yes, sir. Come on, John.
John Love again, 200 North Saginaw. The DDA issues are interesting. I learned about them by attending the DDAs down in Detroit. There's two things, and they weren't doing this either. So, number one, there's an annual report required. I've never seen the annual report for the last year. Of course, Potter was here and he left, and so there's no makeup has been made to present an annual report as required by the law. The other thing is the law requires staggered terms. We don't have staggered terms. All of a sudden, they're all going to come up at some time that was created outside of the law that requires them to be staggered terms. So that's another issue, but don't worry. The DDA down in Detroit doesn't follow the rules either. And on top of that, the governor doesn't even bother obeying the rules either, like the Constitution. And I filed a case with the Supreme Court of the United States because the corruption in this Ilitch deal with the $3 billion is certainly a different magnitude than what we're talking about here. What they've done, and I'm going down tomorrow to them and talk again about this. One aspect of it is that Ilitch signed a lease from the Tiger Stadium where he would provide 50,000 tickets to enable children of low-income families to attend the games. Even rich people can't afford to go anymore, but he never did that. The Stadium Authority, the DDA, they've said, yeah, there's a violation there, but they haven't done anything about it. And we had a meeting with the Tiger people, which was a joke. They said, oh, it's hard to get rid of these tickets. Yeah, if you don't work at it, it is. And on top of that, they said, well, we didn't give away 11,000 tickets of the 50,000 that we were obligated to give away. But don't worry about it. I guess it's a good thing because the Tigers are losers. So, as a matter of fact, now we're going to have all three losing teams in one place. So it's going to be a great breakthrough for $3 billion. So.
Thank you, Mr. Love.
One last thing. It's coming.
Do we have any further public comment? No? This meeting's adjourned at 7:59.